moved to Georgia before my dad retired.
Okay.
I was 17 and getting in a lot of trouble.
Yep.
Oh, actually, I was not getting in any trouble, but I was being bad and not getting caught.
Yeah.
And
Sounds like someone else.
and they were going to get me in my senior year of high school. They had figured out, they had put the puzzle pieces together, and they were going to find a way to set me up and take me down as a little gang leader, because I had a gang called the Fools, Fooles. It was about 10 of us, and one of the members of the gang was the famous musician Patti Smith's little sister, Kimberly.
Huh.
And there's a song about her on her first record, Horses.
No kidding.
And so we were highly influenced by, we loved Blue Oyster Cult and Queen and Led Zeppelin and Mott the Hoople. And then Patty came real early, and we heard demo tapes like of her album a year before it came out, because her sister would give her tapes, and we'd be like, whoa, this is cool. And then we got introduced to the Stooges and Iggy Pop's other band, and just all of a sudden the punk thing broke, and boy, oh boy, I got one way to rate music. Either it gets my dick hard or it does not.
I saw...
and 95% of all music does not. But punk rock came out, and I was just like, this is the shit. Primal driving.
Yeah.
It was like energy. It was like doing a drug without doing any drugs. And I was just like, this is exciting.
I went to go see Panic, just to interject this little story, and in Savannah this past go round. And my girlfriend and I had heard a rumor they were going to be selling posters outside the show. So we wouldn't have to go in the show, get one, and carry it around all night. So we went up there early. Well, there's this little side door to End Market Arena. And so we're like, we didn't see anything outside. We didn't know but this side door was open. So we opened the side door, and there's this long, like, buffet table with record crates. And who's standing there is Dave Schools going through records. He's got his back to us. And I'm like, fuck.
One of the friendliest members of Widespread Panic. Great guy.
So and this is not the first time I've run into him and talked to him, but I always am, like, scared to talk to people like that, because I don't ever want to have, like, a bad interaction, because then it's going to ruin it for me, But, so I'm like, okay, fuck, I'm going to say hello to him. So I walk in there, I grab him, and I say something slick. I can't remember what I said, but he looked, and I always have to remind him that you're my dad, so he makes that connection. And he's going through albums, he's just mentally getting ready to, it's probably, they've already done sound check. He's just fooling around. And so we chat for a second. I introduce him to Ashley, and we're leaving. And he says, "How's your dad?" And the door's closing, so I can't hear him. I said, "What?" He said, how is your dad? He's not even looking at me. He's just still got his back to me. I said, "He's still punk rock." And he goes, "Good." And we left.
Yeah, I've seen Panic over 100 times.
Yeah.
I was on the permanent guest list when they were house band at the Uptown Lounge.
Yeah.
And I also took you to their very first show.
The A-frame, yep.
At the A-frame, where they were a guitar, a bass, and conga drums. Not even a kit, I don't think.
Yeah.
And they played dead covers, Sunshine Daydream.
Yep.
There's a video out there of it, and then
I got the pictures.
My giant dog Wooka walks through the middle of the video because she was an off-leash friendly dog.
I got a picture of her,
even though she was the size of a Shetland pony.
That's how we'll get to that story. So you're 17. You come down to Georgia.
17. I know my parents are moving to Georgia. My sister has been living in Atlanta because she went to school in Alabama and then moved back to Philly for a little while and didn't really find her niche. So got a job with Georgia Public Broadcasting,
Oh, no, I didn't know that.
directing educational programming.
Which
it was
is
very primitive back then.
Which is how she met her Bill. Was it Bill?
Bill,
Her
yeah,
first husband. Yeah.
who was executive producer.
That's right. That's right.
And she married the executive producer.
That's right. Okay.
But anyway, she was set there. They were looking at property to buy. They were going to move down there for the climate for my mom's circulation.
Mm-hmm.
And my brother had gotten his medical degree in Belgium because he couldn't get into the American schools because they were filled with anybody with a GPA went to med school in 1968 because it was an automatic deferment from Vietnam. But our family doctor had gone to school in Europe and pulled some strings and got my brother accepted to Louvain, one of the best medical schools in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And he had to learn French and go get his medical degree in French in Belgium at a French university. And he was going to come back and do his residency in DC and then set up practice in the Atlanta area so he could be near the family.
Yeah.
So I started looking at colleges. I'm a junior in high school, looking at colleges, and I checked out UGA, too big, I don't know, it's too big.
Yeah.
And, Augusta and, all the medium-sized schools. And then we checked out West Georgia College in Carrollton.
Mm-hmm.
And I got there, and it was a beautiful campus. And I'm taking the tour, and this is when I'm a junior in high school. So the summer after junior year, I'm just looking ahead to see but I happen to have my transcripts with me and to make sure I qualified for acceptance or admittance. And I'm in this golf cart bus, and they pull over and they announce on the little microphone, "Is there a Jeff Hannan on the bus?" I said, "Yeah, that's me." And they went, "The dean of the college would like a meeting with you." I went, "Okay." So they took a detour, got out, 70s architecture. The student center was this giant flying saucer, and the dean's office was a little flying saucer on top of the giant flying saucer.
What year is this around?
It's 1977.
Okay.
1977.
Okay.
And private elevator went up there, and he said, "Mr. Hannan." I said, "Yeah, what's going on? What the heck?" And he goes, "Yeah, well, we've been looking at your transcripts, and pretty impressive. A average, high college, high SAT scores. You qualify for early admittance. Have you thought about coming to college now and skipping your senior year of high school?" I said, "Oh, man, I have big plans I've got enough credits to graduate because I took extra classes instead of study halls, and I was just going to have fun and take art classes and shop classes and, extra lit classes, just stuff I was interested in."
Yeah.
He goes, "Yeah, well, that sounds fun, but kind of a waste of a year. I think you'd be a year ahead of everyone in your class, if you took advantage of this offer." I said, "Yeah, we'll have to think about it." And right then we're looking out of this flying saucer that's, 200 feet in the air. And at that point, the grounds there was like a rolling golf course of all these grass-covered, well-kept, landscaped, rolling little hills.
I know the word you're looking for. I can't think of it either.
Yeah, but I think a mogul, is the correct term.
I think you're right too. Covered in snow for sure.
Yeah, so we're looking out this beautiful landscape, and over the hill comes a couple co-eds jogging. It's 1977. Burn the bra, baby. And behind those two was a couple more, and these girls were attractive. And behind there was a dozen more. Eventually, there's 200 braless co-eds, 18 and 19-year-old co-eds, jogging in a line across, up and down these little mogul hills. And I'm looking at it, he goes, so, what do you think? He had his arm around me. He says, so, what do you think? I go, where do I sign? So, 17 years old, didn't go back to my senior year.
Nice.
The powers that be were like, you know, totally disappointed that they weren't going to get him. We're going to get you.
Yeah.
I mean, the local cops and the high school administration had both literally said the words, we're going to get you. Because I was the leader of this little. And we didn't steal stuff. We didn't vandalize.
You're
we didn't
misfits.
do violence. We didn't hurt anybody. You know, we just went to concerts and partied and chased women.
They didn't like that shit.
And, well, it was the partying thing.
Yeah.
Because partying means smoking weed.
Yeah.
And they frowned upon that at that point.
Yeah.
And they didn't get me. Well, flash forward. Following spring, been in college a year. Got a beautiful grad student girlfriend. So, I had turned 18, but just 18.
You're living in a dorm?
Kicked out of the dorms.
Of course.
Kicked out of the dorms for skateboarding on a conference chair outside of a dorm. And the conference chair had come out of a conference room in a dorm that wasn't my dorm.
Oh.
And they accused me of trying to steal the chair. I was like, I was bringing it back. And they go, we saw you trying to put it in the trunk. I was like, yeah, but we were just going to take it over to our dorm because our dorm doesn't have nice conference chairs like this. It's, it's still on college property. We'd just moving a chair from one dorm to another. It's like, we don't see it that way.
Oh, damn it.
And if you ever wonder why they were so weird about it, look up Carrollton, the rocking chair case, where some sorority girl took a rocking chair from a front porch of an abandoned house, and they arrested her for it. And she was a little rich girl from Atlanta, and she gave the judge some lip, and he was known as the hanging judge. He gave her 2 years in jail.
Damn.
And they said, that this is, and it made national news. And that was a couple years before I got there, but they were, they took chair stealing very serious in Carrollton back then.
Jeez.
So got kicked out of the dorms, freaking out, never told my parents, walked up with a guy that I knew had a cheap apartment. Because I borrowed a swimming suit from him once. We had WSI class. I took swimming classes for my PE. And I said, man, does your landlady have any more of those? Because the rent was $60 or $50 a month for a one-bedroom apartment.
Damn.
And he goes, I can't believe you're saying that. My grandmother lives across town. She just broke her hip. I've got to get out of my lease. If you take over my lease, I will keep the utilities in my name and keep the deposit, and you can have the deposit on the apartment. You can move right in, just pay the $60 a month, and we'll keep everything in my name till you get to a point where you can do it. So I'm there. My beautiful grad student girlfriend moved in with me, had my own apartment. I'm drinking age was 18, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm drinking a quart of Miller. Mailman comes to this little cottagey apartment I had, walking distance to school.
Mm.
And there's a letter from the superintendent of schools from Clearview Regional.
Up in New Jersey.
I said, that's weird. Why is there a letter coming for me in the spring from my high school that I haven't thought about for quite a while? Opened the letter. Of course, I'd had a couple puffs and was drinking a quart of Miller and, a little bit buzzed. I opened the letter. It had all unofficial stationery from the R.J. Riordan, the superintendent of schools. And it had one sentence. Dear Mr. Hannan, we request your head size in inches. Signed, the superintendent of schools.
Uh-huh.
And I looked at that letter And I said, is this the Twilight Zone? This is too weird. What could this possibly mean? And then I said, oh, I bet it's for a graduation cap. And this is their way of offering for me to walk with my class. Because I took English classes and I took PE classes. Those are the only state requirements I was missing because you need 4 years for a high school degree in New Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
So I sent them back my head size in inches and I graduated with my class. Went back to New Jersey and at the end of the semester and it was quarter system then, at the end of the third quarter. And I graduated with my class, which was a hoot because I was all growed up. I had a, an adult, serious living girlfriend in my own apartment that I paid for through nefarious means. And let's just say I received at first $60 a month allowance while I was in college. And I took that $60 and I made it into $260 within the month and paid all my bills and kind of had a little business going. And I was all growed up.
Yeah.
And man, I'm at the graduation ceremony. I got my last haircut because my dad pulled me aside. He goes, I know you like that long hair, but I'm going to be taking pictures at graduation and your mom would really love it if you get one more haircut. I will never ask you another thing. And you're 18. You don't have to get this, but I'm asking you as a favor to me. Would you consider cutting your hair for your mom for the graduation pictures? I'm like, sure, no problem. I'll get my last haircut. Boy, oh boy, was it ever my last haircut.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
actually, keep going. There was a time when you did cut your hair short again, though.
Oh, yeah, I get sick of it. I do.
Okay.
I had the first punk rock haircut.
Yeah.
I cut my hair when that girl and I broke up, which I moved to Athens because she had moved to Athens to continue her study. She was just there for the tail end of the existential psych department. They were breaking it up and turning it into lab or experimental psych. I forget what they call that, but there was a turnover.
Okay.
But they had a world-renowned existential psych department, which I took some classes from some amazing, European professors that were just amazing. Great stuff, reading Sartre and I can't remember, but all those existential psych guys.
What was the undergraduate program that you were shooting for at that time? Or were
marketing, studying marketing because my dad wanted me to get a useful degree.
Yes.
And I hated that shit. And but I did it because it made sense.
Yeah.
And I just took cool classes as my electives, art classes.
Yeah, cool.
And wound up with a unofficial minor in sculpture.
Down there or in Athens?
Well, so my girlfriend moved away, but we stayed together. She lived in Athens. I lived in Carrollton for a year.
Got it.
She would come down every other weekend and hang out. And I said, oh, no more fooling around. I busted my ass and got straight A's, baby. Got my GPA up and applied to UGA, got accepted to the Terry School of Business.
Yep. Terry, yeah.
And was in there. And so I moved up to Athens and we stayed together another year, a third year, before we were young and we broke up.
Probably about 1980-ish?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, 79, 80.
Okay.
And
where were you living when you first moved here?
I lived on I lived on Lexington Extension, off of Lexington Road in a duplex, but that was just sublet.
Mm-hmm.
Then my girlfriend had found a nice apartment, but out on the east side, Sartain Drive, halfway to Winterville.
I know the name of the road.
And we had an apartment there, and that's where we were when we broke up. And then I moved into a place on Beulah, and they got mad at me because I partied too much, and they kicked me out. And then I found this crazy behind a nice house on Boulevard, it was a carriage house.
This is 743 and a half.
Yeah, 743 and a half.
Yes.
Boulevard was the carriage house that had been converted to a couple apartments. And I got the upstairs apartment, and it was a cool as hell apartment.
And I want to talk about that too.
Several levels. And,
yeah, it was funky.
Went through a couple other short-term girlfriends and came to Athens to see one of my girlfriends for July 4th. And she surprised me with, hey, happy July 4th. We're done.
How courteous.
So I went back to my apartment, which I had sublet. I had been living in Dawsonville, helping my dad build a house.
So which is a good stopper, because I was going to ask you, who was around 1980? You come into town. Who's rocking at this?
78.
You come into Athens at 78?
Right. I moved to Carrollton in 76. So I'm actually was wrong about the dates.
Okay. No, that's cool.
I was the class of 77, but I left high school in 76, did my freshman and sophomore year.
Who's rocking when you come to Athens, music-wise?
Nobody.
B-52s hadn't get started yet, right?
Nobody.
Okay.
Nobody. Cover bands at the B&L Warehouse was the big rock show.
Where was B&L Warehouse?
B&L Warehouse was that oil building at the top of Oak Street.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know what I'm talking about? That big brick place. It was also the I&I.
Okay.
An alternative club that opened up briefly after Tyrone's burned down.
Which I want to talk about too. Yeah.
Yeah. Tyrone's was the first alternative club, only alternative club in Athens, and one of only 3 in the whole country. One in San Fran, before LA or any other, or Boston, or there was one in New York, one in San Francisco, and one in Athens.
Who ran Tyrone's? Do you remember? It's been a long time.
John Schnell and Chris, I can't remember his name, and Olivier pooled their money together and got an old railroad warehouse and opened up a club there.
One of my earliest memories of Athens was me and Yorma Sterrett playing out on the railroad tracks behind Tyrone's, because Kenny and you were friends. I remember Kenny. So here's the people that I remember from that time. Kenny, Rick the printer. He might have been later. I don't know if Rick was around.
Yeah. Oh no, Rick. I met Rick right when I moved to Athens. He had put an ad in the paper, print shop seeks employees, no experience necessary. I showed up at 8 a.m, and there was these illegal Germans, overstayed visa Germans that he hired under the table. And they were there drinking coffee. I'm like, I'm here about the job. Is Rick here? And they went, oh yeah. They were laughing there. Yeah. He's upstairs. And I went upstairs, and the dude is, real long hair, crazy hippie looking guy.
Yep.
Asleep in a pile of ragged out quilts in the middle of a room, asleep. And I knocked, there was no door. I knocked on the doorway, and he said, what? I'm like, I'm here about the job. He goes, oh, for God's sake, come back at 11. And I said, excuse me, sir, but by 11 a.m. this morning, I will have a job, but it will not be working for you. Thank God, because the dude was notorious for scamming his employees somehow.
Another memory I have of him was when he later moved into that church building that REM used to play in back in the day.
He didn't live there. The print shop was next door.
Oh, okay. That's what I'm thinking.
And that's still there. He still owns that.
Oh, no kidding. Okay.
I
remember
knocked down the church. I considered buying that church. They were only asking $35,000 for it. Boy, I should have bought it.
Yeah.
Could have sold it for a lot more.
So who were you friends with around this time you come rolling into town? Because was Lee Wyatt, was he later?
Much later.
Okay. All right.
Met him and coming back from Niagara Falls when I rode my motorcycle from from Athens to Niagara Falls back and caught 14 Grateful Dead shows.
Okay.
Met them on the side of the road during a transaction of one type or another. And yeah.
Who turned you on to do the Grateful Dead? Because you were punk rock to that point, right?
Punk rock.
Right.
Yep. I got a punk rock. I got the Athens first punk rock haircut, which was a Bowie cut, which I had sported in high school a few times. You know, fuzzy on the top, and I had the long in the back, short on the sides, long in the back, cut to a point. And, you know, people would drive by and go, punk rock faggot, country people, frat people, right? Fast forward several years, Billy Ray Cyrus has a hit. He's got the same damn haircut, and all of a sudden it's the official redneck country haircut. But it was actually the first same haircut.
Yeah.
First, you know, with a rat tail.
It's come back now.
First haircut. Yeah, cyclical.
That's weird.
First punk rock haircut. And I got introduced to the scene. So I'm walking down the street, leather jacket, holes in my jeans, black Converse All-Stars, punk rock haircut. The only punk rock haircut in town. You know, there weren't even hardly any long hairs. Everybody was, you know, looked like the 60s. The, you know, frat society was dominant.
Okay.
And this girl comes up to me, this heavy set, very cute, but big girl. Comes up to me and she's like, hey, I like your haircut. And I went, oh, thanks. And she goes, yeah, your whole outfit. It's like, are you into that kind of music? And I went, oh, yeah. Punk rock, I'm into it, man. I'm from Patti Smith's hometown. And she's like, oh, wow. Well, we have, every Thursday night, we have a little get-together at my house, a little sock hop, where we play records and dance. You know, and it's all alternative stuff. You know, do you have any records? And I'm like, oh, I've got this. I've got this. I've got this. I've got this. Eventually she goes, well, how many records do you have? I go, I got over 200 records. She's like, you know, most of them are all alternative. And she's like, well, you got to come. Well, that girl's name was Vanessa Briscoe.
Okay.
And she became the lead singer for Pylon, which was like the third or fourth band to appear.
Was it Michael Lukowski?
Played bass.
Yeah. Okay.
Played bass. And Curtis Crowe on drums. Amazing drummer.
Curtis, yep.
We called him the human metronome. And this guy, Randy Bewley, on guitar, who has passed away, unfortunately.
Okay.
But Vanessa has put together the Pylon Appreciation Society, or no.
Yeah. Right behind you on the wall. Pylon Reenactment Society.
Reenactment, yeah. And with a couple sessions players, and are doing covers and new original music in the vein of Pylon.
So this is kind of like the first.
And they're playing now. They're just put out another record.
But until you get introduced to
Vanessa, she had not been in a band. She was not in a band.
And this was the first like happening scene that you're catching in Athens.
Right. Oh, there's a punk rock sock hop every Thursday at Vanessa Briscoe's house.
Yes, I'm coming.
I was like, yeah. I'll be there. I brought all my records, and they loved my records, and they liked my look. But it was very cliquey, and I was always kind of on that edge of the clique.
Right.
But they liked that good weed. So I was invited to everything.
So to pause for a second, because this would be a good point to interject this. So my original intent was to do this at Nucci Space. They're booked up this week because they have a youth band thing going on. Kat, how do you pronounce Kat's last name? Bobon. New Kat somehow reached out to her because I was trying to figure out like a place to do it. Anyway, this whole thing in this house that we're recording in.
Yeah, she's sweet. Give business to Silly's.
Yeah, exactly.
Silly's has retro stuff. They have Junkman's daughter's brother in there. They got little booths of eclectic, vintage stuff. Just a bunch of crazy cool stuff. One of the last, Athens used to be nothing but those weird shops. Mm-hmm. It's pretty much the last bastion of downtown shops because once they put apartments in there, the rents. Let's put it this way. a spot that I rented for $150 a month is now $4,000 a month.
God damn. Well, I'll put this is an Airbnb that she rents out, so I'll put it in the show notes for the episode. But it's a perfect house. It turns out, because this house reminds me of what every house looked like on Boulevard, Nantahala, like in Normaltown.
Not this clean, though.
No. But this style.
This place is pin clean.
Oh, I know. It's beautiful. But
yeah.
But it's funny how that happened, because this episode with you was going to be the introduction of how, like, we got together, how, like, you coming to Athens, meeting my mom, and, you know, as we go forward. But it ended up being the perfect match. She says, I got this Airbnb you can use. I'm like, she sends me the Airbnb list, and I'm like, well, that's fucking perfect.
Got the atmosphere.
It's the style that I would associate with Athens.
Everything about all the old bands and clubs is that's the decor. So it's wonderful. They super smart.
Very cool
way to do it, because music is big tourist business now.
Yeah, you're right about that. So back to Vanessa and
so I went to the sock hops, and then right then I never got to see them. This little band that went to high school there, Ricky and Cindy, Ricky Wilson and Cindy Wilson, brother, sister, and Kate and Fred went to high school together. Were the weirdos, and they shopped at thrift stores and wore weird wigs and hung out and came up with a cover of had a little band in high school. Came up with a cover of that song Downtown, and put together a very short set and played a house party show across the street from Taco Stand on Millage.
In that house?
In not the zoo. The zoo, there was Flower Shop, then Zoo, which was a crazy commune where many awesome things happened.
I remember that.
And then another house where this old retired guy lived upstairs and rented the downstairs.
And had the porch out front.
And Kurt Wood and Paul Bouchard. Kurt Wood, DJ, several bands. Paul Bouchard, drummer for a seminal band, The Side Effects. Very, very early. One of the first four bands. But anyway, they had a house party show. B-52s had just finished high school. They were working at the El Dorado Cafe, the vegetarian restaurant of that era. And they played, and one of their friends had become a model, was up in New York, was dating some bigwig, one of the promoters at Max's Kansas City.
Cindy looks amazing still, by the way.
Oh, yeah. Everybody had a crush on her.
Oh, yeah.
But Max's Kansas City was the nice, cool place where real bands played, like Iggy's bands and Bowie's bands and what was that New York drag band? The first one. I can't remember. I'm having a brain fart, but it's
this is Max's Cafe in Richmond, you said?
Max's Kansas City.
Oh, Kansas City, got it.
And it was in New York.
Oh, okay, got it.
Or it might have been Hoboken.
Sorry,
I'm not sure exactly. I get confused about
panic mind
whether they were in Hoboken or in the city. But it was where all the cool the New York Dolls.
Okay.
They were one of the house bands, and and then other bands, if they got popular at CBGB's, which was a punk rock mecca, the low-level dive bar. And if you got, if you packed enough people in there, then you got to book there. But it was more national acts. But anyway, she was dating, and she had a demo tape of the B-52s and played her for her boyfriend. And he was like, come up and play a show. And they went up, played a show, blew everybody away because nothing sounded like the B-52's first album.
Yeah.
They basically, honestly, I think they should be credited with inventing new wave, because they took 60s garage, punk rock, and added keyboards to it, weird keyboards, and just weird vocals. And they invented new wave. But they went up there, they played, they got signed to Warner Brothers. Guy was there, and they went on a world tour with 15 songs.
Jesus.
You know, they put that album out. They're in Japan. They'd play their set. And they're like, sorry, ladies and gentlemen, that's all the songs we know. And the crowd screams, play them again. And they're like, okay. And they play the whole set again. And, but anyway, worldwide phenomenon, got rich, you know, immediately said, see ya, Athens, moved to New York through the biggest party. You know, they were the it band through the giant parties that every, you know, every celebrity wanted to attend.
Yeah.
You know, all of high New York high society and hip society and Andy Warhol and everybody wanted to go to the B-52s parties, and they did really well, and they had a great career. And you know, they don't get them a lot of credit for their later albums, but there's something great on every album, on everything they ever did. But that first album, oh my God, they'd throw that. So that happened in like, it felt like 15 minutes. This place that, you know, these four kids played a party in a living room, same size as this living room, same layout. I mean, it was, the old houses were all, this is an old house. This is, you know, from the 20s, this house. And immediately, you know, we're worldwide superstars. And everybody's like, we're forming a band, because those guys didn't know a damn thing. Ricky actually was a really talented guitar player. And unfortunately, his life was cut very short.
Yeah, I read about it.
Between the second and third album, I think he passed of AIDS.
Yeah.
But, you know, big loss.
RIP,
but luckily, the other guys were very, very talented, and they were part of the songwriting.
I can still turn on Rock Lobster.
Oh, yeah.
And have a fucking...
There goes a guarfish. I mean, it was... Everything on that album is a hit, and it was great. And they would put that on. They would put that on at a party, and everybody, hundreds of people at these parties, everybody would start dancing, and the floors would start moving like a trampoline, like they were made out of rubber, because so many people dancing in unison to this thing. And actually, somebody's whole giant antebellum front porch collapsed, and somebody broke their leg.
Oh, Jesus! And
when the party was at an upstairs thing, they would have pre-cut heart pine 4x4s, cut to size, go downstairs, and position braces under the under the floor, you know, floor to ceiling in the first story, so that the second story wouldn't collapse, because the dancing was so hard.
Damn.
And during all this, somebody had an idea of booking alternative music. Athens had never had anything. Original music, alternative music.
Did Uptown and 40 Watt exist at that point?
No.
So that was later.
They were spawned by the demise. Nobody had another alternative club, because Tyrone's was internationally known, you know, and would book Steel Pulse, the Stranglers, you know, big acts.
I remember when it caught on fire, we went up and saw it while they're extinguishing the building. I remember that as a kid.
Your mom and I went out in the front yard, saw the smoke. We were about a mile and a half away.
Yep.
Saw the smoke, knew it was Tyrone's, and we both burst into tears. We stood in that yard and cried.
Yeah.
Because it sucked. They didn't have insurance. Their insurance had lapsed. And everybody had pitched in their own equipment to create this hodgepodge of PA.
Oh, no.
PA technology at that point I managed a band that Aria's mom, Diane, sang in, Toy Boat. And we actually had PA speakers from World War II wired in. And I mean, It was just this hodgepodge of everybody. The community just built this weird, giant patchwork PA, which burned to the ground.
Ugh.
And the only thing that survived was a stack of bumper stickers. They had never put out a T-shirt, but they did put out a bumper sticker.
Oh,
and the shirt I'm wearing right now,
yep, I saw that,
is a exact recreation of one of the surviving, which I was gifted to make this shirt, gifted by Chris, one of the original owners, to make these shirts. And I made the first Tyrone shirt 40 years after it burnt to the ground, and been popular, sold several hundred of them. Folks that know.
Yeah.
Everybody else can go blow.
How close to that time period did Rockfish Palace open up?
That was on down the line.
That was a while later, too.
You want a chronology of the clubs?
Yes.
Okay.
Please.
Tyrone's burns down.
Mm-hmm.
No bands. All right. By that point, there were at least a dozen, and it was just new bands were forming every day. People were flocking to, from across the South and eventually across the country and the world to this music city, Athens, to start a band because there was so much creativity in packed in such a small place.
B-52s left this vacuum of excitement.
Right. They created the excitement. The burning down of Tyrone's created a vacuum, nowhere to play. Fortunately, there were a lot of house shows.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. One of the house shows was Pylon's first show.
Uh-huh.
Pylon and another famous band, I'm not sure which one did, but their grill is a burger joint in Athens. And it's a 4-story building. The restaurant's on the first story. And there was an art space on the fourth floor. You had to go up these rickety stairs, like creepy and crazy, all the way up there. And it was just a huge, like, empty room, basically an attic room. And in the middle of the room was a single wire with a 40-watt light bulb.
This is above,
the old-fashioned. I don't know if you've ever seen them before.
No, I know exactly what you're talking about.
But it's a wire hanging down, and there's no fixture. It's a light bulb attached to a connector attached to a wire, and you can just swing around.
Yeah.
And the band would form a circle underneath the light so they could see their instruments and play there. And they were like, whoa, this is a club. What's the name of the club? And there was a 40-watt light bulb in that socket.
40-watt club.
40-watt club. So it was breaking every law in the book. There was no fire exits. There was no code. There was no license. There was nothing. So they couldn't keep doing that. They got away with it a couple times. Couple cool art shows, some plays, some multimedia things. But two of the guys, Curtis Crow, the drummer from Pylon, and Paul Scales.
Yep.
Paul Scales was working at the deli across the street where Starbucks is now on College Avenue, directly across the street.
Yep.
And they weren't using the upstairs, and they opened it up as the Crow's Nest, but immediately started calling it the 40-watt club.
Nice.
And it was too small, and they outgrew it very quickly. And then they found a place down on Clayton Street where the 40-watt inhabited twice, but this was the first incarnation of it. They got this guy to put up $700 to buy a little PA, of which I own the original PA speakers.
No shit.
The first PA of the 40-watt, the PA I use for band practice, are the PA speakers that he bought, and he never got repaid. He was an investor. He invested $700, and he never got repaid. But he's a rich kid from Atlanta, and so nobody gave a shit. But Paul Scales and
Curtis Crow.
Yep. Put together this little club. Oh. And they knew about this space because, or wait, it was after. It was a coffee club. Back to Rick the Printer.
Okay.
Rick the Printer started these illegal coffee clubs called 1111. They opened at 11:11 at night. They opened. And people after the clubs, because 12 o'clock was cut off then.
Oh.
And they opened at 11:11, would stay open till 4 in the morning and serve espresso.
No shit.
But Rick the Printer had one of these little places in the Clayton Street address, originally in the Morton Theater. Then he got arrested because he was stealing power from next door. He had just connected his power to their power in this
He's
basically abandoned spot in the Morton Theater.
Where the Bluebird was, or where your shop was later?
It was the space directly behind the Bluebird.
Okay.
Little tiny space.
Yep.
He got thrown out of there, so he the 40 watt, God, it's really hard to get the chronology.
No, yeah, you're good.
But at some point, Rick opened a coffee club there. And this new band, REM, probably their third gig.
Mm.
And so, it was a unlicensed coffee club, and he was just throwing a party.
Mm-hmm.
But, 400 people showed up. You could maybe cram 80 people into it. So the cops found out about it. The show went off without a hitch. It was a great show. REM was great from their first show. It was just like the chemistry, they were a surf punk band before they started with the mandolins and shit. But they were a little surf punk band, playing Shakin' All Over and Walk Don't Run and, Secret Agent Man and stuff like that. And some originals, Gardening at Night and
that's fun.
Don't Go Back to Rockville, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But great stuff. The originals were great. I had hung out and partied with every member of REM before they met each other. Except the rhythm section. Mike and Bill had met each other in Macon and played in a band called Chip and the Cheetahs, I think.
Okay.
But anyway, and Pete had always wanted to be Pete Townsend. And I met him. He didn't even have an amplifier, but would practice Rolling Stones covers, old 60s Rolling Stone covers and stuff without an amp, but he had a guitar. And
crazy.
And Mike I met because we dated all the same women. We traded girlfriends 4 or 5 different times. We had the same exact taste in women.
Yeah, he was the baby face one of the group too, if I remember. And we were buddies. And Michael Stipe I met because I knew Patti Smith, and he was a Patti Smith freak. He was just really, really a fanatic about that, a Smithophile. His sister Cindy.
So he was freaked out.
His sister was a teacher at Bernie Harris, I think, when I was there.
And his other sister, I dated a couple times. Nothing serious. Gotcha. She was underage, and we were just, holding hands and friends.
Gotcha.
But I went out with her a few times.
So where was you started to tell me where the Grateful Dead came into play. Because, that's
Grateful Dead's not happening at this point.
Okay, so that's even later.
Grateful Dead's not happening. I had long hair. I got a punk rock haircut. That lasted a couple years. I grew my hair out again. But I had heard these people, there was a small, tight hippie contingent centered around this little community out Tallahassee Road, like way out Tallahassee Road, called Fowlerville, where there was the old slave cabins that people fixed up and rented. And they had parties, and there was folks with houses in town, and they played the music. And I had gotten a gift of Blues for Allah when I was a kid. I was a record collector, knew a dude that worked at Columbia Records pressing plant, and he stole records constantly. So he had thousands of records, and he gave me a Jerry Garcia band's first record, and Blues for Allah. So I was familiar with the Grateful Dead. I thought this is interesting, but they can't sing too good. You know, why do they sing like that? But the musicianship was obvious. Yeah. And even though I was a punk rocker, I can appreciate amazing musicianship in any genre. And there was a community that were fanatical about this, and they would play me these tapes, and I go, well, that's kind of weird that they let people tape.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh no, you don't understand the community. And also a community built around really good, fresh LSD.
Mm-hmm.
And if you've never had really good, fresh LSD, then, you know, there's a whole universe you know nothing about. Because nothing is like that. I mean, peyote might be like it. I've never eaten that shit. I'm sure it would give me... I don't like to throw up.
Yeah.
That's part of it.
Oh, yeah.
That's why I never became a junkie.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, man, you hit this shit, you throw up for a while, and then it's great. It's just like, fuck that. I hate to throw up. I have let food poisoning make its way through my body and kept me sick for 2 days because I wouldn't throw up. I hate to throw up. It's also kept me from being an alcoholic.
Yeah, me too.
Because I have a low tolerance.
Me too.
Low tolerance for alcohol. Mm-hmm. And I can party, you know. But when I get to a certain point, I know if I don't stop, like if I get the slightest bit dizzy, I know if I have another drink or two, I'm going to be throwing up. I hate to throw up. So I'd stop drinking, start drinking water.
That's not, yeah, I'm the same way.
Yep. I do not throw up on weed. Weed does not make me throw up. So, but anyway, I had experimented with psychedelics, got introduced to them at West Georgia.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing else to do.
And it's that time.
And yeah, I mean, there were orange barrels, real orange sunshine and shit from the 60s. Shit was kicking around there. And so I was just really, really interested. And some friends go, well, you know, we're driving out to Colorado. We're going to go see the Grateful Dead's 15th anniversary, 1980. So I guess it was 80 because that's the 15th anniversary. It was before I was with your mom.
Okay. All right.
And I didn't have any money, but I had a TV I never watched. So I took it to a pawn shop, got $50 for it, and I go, I got $50. I'm ready to go to Colorado and back and see shows. Yeah. 3 shows on $50. I'm not sure what I was thinking, but I was like, you know, I better watch my food. So I got all this dried food, this big bag of trail mix and granola mixed together and all this dried fruit into this big brown paper sack, you know, like 4 pounds of it. So it's like worst case scenario, I can get water for free and I can eat this stuff and I can survive. And I get into the van, a Volkswagen van, and we're going to go to the 15th anniversary at Folsom Field. And they're like, dude, you're not going to, it cannot be described to you. But you are going to walk into that place and go, oh, my God, I have never seen this many people like me in one place in my life. And that was true. That's exactly what I said when I got there. But anyway, I get into that van and it's like, okay, this is going to take a day and a half of riding in this van. And we get up to southern Tennessee and the motor blows up.
Great.
And they go, well, the part of the motor that blew up, we can fix it. But the shop doesn't open until tomorrow. We can get the parts, and they were mechanics, and we can fix this on the side of the road. So everybody just chill out. Well, anyway, when we first got in the van, it's like, oh, cool, you know, they don't want me to drive. I'm just here for the ride. It's a long drive. So I dropped a couple hits of acid. And I'm tripping balls when the motor blows up. And they head off to town to try to find the parts. And I'm just sitting there with a couple girls. And I'm like, fuck this. And it's like, look, we're only going to miss the first show. You know, we're going to miss the first show. It's like, look, I've been looking forward to this experience. I am not missing that first show. I got out of that van and put out my thumb and hitchhiked to Boulder, Colorado.
Wow.
From Tennessee. Had ridden in the van to that point. And made it, saw all 3 shows, jumped over a guardrail, second story guardrail, and gotten on the floor, both up front, both time, all 3 times. And I had never seen anything like that, especially, there's nothing like a Grateful Dead show, but a Grateful Dead show under the influence of psychedelics and picking up all this energy from the crowd and the band and just their approach to music and the dancing. I was, loved to dance. So wasn't too much of a transition from punk rock dancing to hippie dancing, which was all for me 60s dancing because I had been fascinated by, the mashed potato, the pony, the alligator, and all those 60s dances, and had learned them. My sister taught me that. We're teaching me and my brother the monkey when I was 4 years old, and we're doing she's teaching us how to do the monkey.
Oh, geez.
My sister's 14 years older than me. My brother's 10 years older than me. So he's 14, she's 18. He wants to learn how to dance. I'm there. So I start dancing, and she's like, Joey, no, not like that. Do it like Jeff's doing it. Jeff's doing it right. And my brother got so mad. He's like, he is not. It's just his pajamas making it look like that. And that has been a catchphrase for my whole life. It's just his pajamas. Never mind the gentleman there. It's just his pajamas.
Don't be fooled.
It's all an illusion.
Did your friends make it out in the van? Or no?
They did. They got there for the second show.
Okay.
But I got there sooner.
Excellent.
And they weren't going on. I was going to try to get a ride back to Athens or Atlanta while I was there, but I never did because I was just too busy partying.
Boulder's a fun town.
Yep.
I can't imagine how fun it was back then.
And I met up with this other guy from Athens and it's like, well, let's hitchhike together. And we got a ride, and and a car with Atlanta plates passes us on the interstate. And I'm like, catch up to the car with Atlanta plates. And I make a little note. We need a ride to Atlanta. Mm-hmm. So they pulled over, and this guy was like, man, I don't know if we're going to make it on the gas on the money we have for gas. You got any money? I go, I got $1 left. And he's like, well, you got any weed? I was like, I have a joint. He went, just get in the fucking car. So they gave us a ride from Colorado to Atlanta for $1 and a joint. And I ate that goddamn granola. They dropped us off in Atlanta. I called a rich buddy that I had gone to school in Carrollton with, Dave Thomas.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's still alive. Probably not. His habits were not good. But he came and picks us up in his Lancer, took us back to his dad's Dunwoody mansion, got steaks out of the freezer, nice soft bed, and I hitchhiked back to Athens from Atlanta. Crazy. But I saw those shows, and it was amazing.
How many days was it?
3 days.
3 days, okay.
And I think the tickets were $8.
That's so crazy.
I think
no Ticketmaster back then?
Might have been something like that, but back then, if you looked cool and if you looked like you were part of the crew, and you asked around for tickets, somebody would pull a ticket out of their pocket and sell it to you for what it said on the it called face value. You know? Yep. Or on occasion, just say, hey man, you look cool.
Here you go.
Here's one for free.
Here's your miracle.
They would call it a miracle, right?
Yep.
They'd call it a miracle.
Yeah.
And enjoyed several of those.
I remember going to, not to stop you again, but I remember going to see the Grateful Dead.
At the Fox?
2 times. One was in D.C., me, you, and Lee Wyatt. And there was there was something that a bunch of people would get together, storm the gate, some of us aren't going to make it through, boys. Some of us are.
Yeah.
And I remember you telling me about that. Like, they're going to grab a couple of us. We didn't do it, but I remember that happening, and I remember people getting
Right.
in.
But I did get into 2 different shows that I didn't have tickets for nefariously. Philadelphia Civic Center had these was built out of these 2-foot cement blocks with a deep grout between each block, a 3-story building.
Uh-huh.
And top of the second story was a little tiny vent window. And we're talking a foot, 18 inches, 12 inches by 18 inches. And it was cracked open to vent some kind of kitchen thing or something. And some kid, I'm standing there, and some kid climbed up there, and we're watching him climb up there, and we're all like, yeah, go. And he climbs all the way up these blocks, free climbing up the face of this
cinder block,
small skyscraper. Opens that window all the way and gets in. And as soon as he got in, boom, 50 people rushed that front of the building, but I was right next to him. So I'm up that wall next. I got in there second. We were in this room, and then it opened to a hallway, and it's just where, kitchens and service areas were. And we see elevators. Like, oh, the elevator. Elevator opens, and there's this older black gentleman with a cart of orange juice bottles in this small elevator. And boom, 40 of us stuff into this 8x8 elevator with this guy.
He's freaking the fuck out.
He's freaking out a little bit, but we're being cool. We're being respectful. His cart almost got knocked over, but did not. But had gotten jostled. And he was a little wide-eyed, but then everything was cool. And we go, man, does this go down to the show? And he's like, yep, we're going down to the show. So went down the 2 stories back to the ground level. Elevator door opens up. There's the arena. We run out into the arena screaming. And that was awesome.
The second time, you're right. I think it was Fox. The Fox, and
you had been asking me relentlessly,
okay,
do you think they're going to play Uncle John's Band?
Which was my jam.
Are they going to play Uncle John's Band? Do you think they'll? It's like, look, dude, they play different songs every night, but there's just as much chance that they're going to play it. But I think I even said, I kind of have a good feeling. I've been on tour. They haven't been playing. They hadn't played it yet. So they might pull it out for this show.
And they did.
And damned if they didn't. They played your song. And that was
stoked.
Magic.
That was a lot of fun. And I still like
And oh my God, the Grateful Dead in the Fox Theater. I don't know if how many of people listening to this have ever seen a show at the Fox Theater, but oh my God, Jeff Beck, the best, most talented guitar player I've ever seen. And I've seen them all. Baby, every surviving 60s guy, 70s guy, 80s guy, and 90s guy. Jeff Beck, best guitar player I ever saw perform.
I've heard he
ripped
amazing.
it the F up.
I believe it.
I was just blown away.
Yeah.
And I was really close. And there's not a bad seat in the Fox. But the acoustics in there are amazing. And the way the place looks is just, it's trippy even if you're not high.
Yeah.
It's an Egyptian ballroom. It's cool looking.
That's a cool place. It's a real cool place. So when does the Human Rights Festival kick up? Because I remember those very vividly too. I remember going to that. They'd be downtown on College Avenue, and then I remember very colorfully being out at the fairgrounds one year, and me and Mars Ferris getting up on the stage and singing "I Love Rock and Roll" by Joan Jett, like the chorus for 5 minutes, and made everybody sick of us. But when did the Human Rights Festival start up?
I think that was 1978 or 79. I think it was 1979. Mm-hmm. I got affiliated because I was in a left-wing group called the Student Coalition for Peace and Equality, SCOPE. Mm. And the Human Rights Festival was an idea of the SCOPE folks, a couple of the members of Scope, they were like, Legion Field has a stage. Well, we want to throw a party. Can we throw a keg party at Legion Field? And they're like, well, no, you can't throw a party. But this is before they knew what the fuck. So it was very lenient. And they go, but you could have an event.
Okay.
You could have an event. And it's like, oh, well, yeah, it's not a party. It's an event. It's the Human Rights Festival. Yeah, we're going to call it the Human Rights Festival, and it's going to be it's going to be speakers and bands alternating.
Mm-hmm.
And they approved it. Got a bunch of local bands.
I'm gonna track down Ed Tant.
And Legion Field was this just bowl-shaped field that we went to.
Yeah, there was a pool. There was a pool there too,
and a pool,
big
pool,
Legion pool,
beautiful pool, giant Olympic pool.
Yeah.
Somebody pulled up. These bikers pulled up in a beat up like 60s Ford van with a side door. Opened up the side door, and they had 4 kegs of beer. So we were all drinking free biker beer. Nice. Maybe they passed the hat and you threw in $1 or whatever. But yeah, and it was just a hippie party.
Was it after the Dead that you started tie-dyeing? Because
it was my second round with the Dead. Okay. So I saw probably 20 or 30 shows, and then kind of got out of it for a little while and went on this motorcycle at a early 70s Moto Guzzi 750 that looked like a Harley hardtail from the 40s. It just had this weird touring bike styling. It was just beautiful, old looking bike. And I went up there and I met that guy, Lee Wyatt, coming home from there on the way to the Philly show that I got into for free. But I met him, and the following year, he saw me in the street in Athens. He goes, "Hey man, I have family in Greensboro, and I'm at." He was from DC or suburb of DC.
Yeah.
I can't remember what his dad was a big wig in the military, and anyway, he saw me. He goes, "Hey, aren't you that dude that I met at the rest stop?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Man, I'm new in town. I'm shy. I don't have any friends. I don't know who the Dead folks are." Lee's like, "Hey, I've got a brand new Mustang 5.0 and I'm going on tour and I need a tour partner." So we got into his Mustang and toured a little bit, and that shit's expensive. I was saving up for a vacation, and I'd do a tour for a vacation. But I said, you know what? I'm going to make a bootleg bumper sticker. So I made a bootleg bumper sticker of a skull with wings that said Grateful Dead in a circle around it. And I made bumper stickers, and it was my first printing, and it was really hard, and they looked like shit. And I had 200, and I was like, I'm going to go sell bumper stickers on Grateful Dead tour with my new friend Lee, who was much younger than me. And we went out, and after a couple of days, he goes, "How you doing with those bumper stickers?" I was like, "Oh, I made like $40. That's going to cover my share of the hotel room, the food, the ticket for today. And I just got to get out there and bust again." He goes, "I made $250 in an hour and a half selling these tie-dyes. This guy showed me how to do tie-dyes last tour. I'm selling these tie-dye shirts I made. When we get back to the hotel room, I'll show you how to make show you how to make tie-dyes."
Huh, I didn't know he was the...
He was the guy. So he showed me how to make a spiral tie-dye.
Yep. I remember very clearly.
And I'm like, oh, I see. The pleating creates the folding. And my first time I go, well, if you spiral it like that, it makes pleats like that. Then if you fold it like this and this, it's going to make that and that. And this other one, if you fold it like this, this, and this.
Yeah.
And it was the closest thing. I'm not a big new ager, but it was the closest thing to a past life experience I've ever had. It was like I saw it and I knew how to do it, and I was good at it the very first time. Better than the guy I showed him, better than anyone else in town.
Yep.
From the first day. And he's like, how, of course, we're a little high. He's like, how do you know how to do that? I go, I don't know how I know,
I just
but
know.
I just know. Realizing
Yeah.
there was money to be
Yeah,
made
yeah.
in this thing. So, yeah. So all of a sudden, boom, $400 days, $600 days. I
Mhm.
had $2,500 afternoons.
Yeah, I
And
remember.
like, we're staying at the Biltmore tonight, boys.
Yep.
And a little crew that would be runners for my stuff. And
I remember
you know,
being with
6
you.
months later, Lee is working for Lee, the guy to show me how to tie dye. He's my production manager.
Yep.
And I got a little wholesale business going
I remember counting cash at
in a hotel
on
room.
tour and stacks of cash being on the table.
Stacks of cash.
Yeah.
Now, it wasn't legal cash because we were vending without a license.
Right.
But it wasn't nefarious. We weren't dealing drugs, which is very, very dangerous
Yeah.
on anywhere at any time from all sides. But, you know, you go to jail for a long time.
Yeah.
And so that was not a smart route. I just wanted to party and have fun, not
Mhm.
get in trouble. Or low level possession if the worst case scenario. So we did these tie dyes, and then I came back to Athens, and my wholesale tie dye company, it was tie dye used to come and go. It was in, and then it was not in.
Uh-huh.
And during one point when it was not in, I was like, well, you know, screen printing seems to be still in, and I can screen print on tie-dyes or plain shirts.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody said, well, the screen printing company just went out of business. They're looking for somebody to get rid of their equipment to. And this other guy had a futon shop in the Payne building next to the Morton Theater, and he was moving to a bigger place. He was looking for somebody to take over their lease.
Yep.
So I didn't have any money. So I looked at the screen printing equipment, and they go, well, we want $2,500 for it. And I went, well, I don't have that kind of money. I got about $500. I could put $500 down on it. And then we're like, and write out a promissory note that I'll pay for it when I get back from Dead Tour.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're like, they were desperate. They needed to get it out of there. They'd been evicted. They'd gone bankrupt. So I got the equipment, moved it into this futon shop, was similar to my apartment.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, I'm looking for somebody to take over my lease. I'll leave the utilities in my name.
Yep.
And you can take over the lease and have this really cheap spot. It's like $100 a month for a commercial spot downtown. It's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Then it was a matter of shirts.
Mm-hmm.
Was this little Jewish girl, Katie Hyman, was a fan of my tie-dye and had seen me vending at the Human Rights, met me at the Human Rights Festival, and had bought tie-dyes and ordered custom tie-dyes. She goes, my dad's a wholesale t-shirt guy, and I told him about you, and he wants to help you out.
Huh.
Call him up, see if you can work out something. So he goes, yeah, sure. I'm consider helping you out. What do you need? I go, well, I need 1,000 shirts on a 90-day note. And he went, ooh. Well, little did I know that 100 shirts or 200 shirts on a 14-day note was pretty much the limit, industry standard.
Uh-huh.
The risk that wholesalers were willing to take with you. You might get a 2-week advance on it,
Uh-huh.
and you'd have to be established so they could chase you if you didn't pay. But he's like, my daughter has a lot of faith in you. All right, I'll front you 1,000 shirts. Pay me back in 90 days. So I had 90 days on that. I had 60 days. I opened the business with $8 in cash, I think, after I put the 500 down on the equipment. Man, dyed and printed those 1,000 shirts, went out on tour, came back flush in 30 days, paid everybody back in 30 days, and still had a couple grand.
Nice.
And I started that business and now I've screen printed several million.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know, maybe close to 10 million shirts.
That's a lot of damn shirts.
And I've tie-dyed. I'm doing a lot of tie-dye now. You know, I've done 5,000 tie-dye shirts this year, sold 5,000 tie-dyes this year. So the number of tie-dyes, it was at about 1.2 million, but it's creeping up. Probably 1.5 million tie-dyes sold.
Another story I was going to ask you about, I remember, I think it was what the Widespread Panic design. You designed that original snowflake design.
They call it the snowflake after, let's just say we had a disagreement about who owned the design.
Right.
So I had an agreement with JB, handshake agreement. Nobody else gets to print my designs, but I've been trying to sell it to him for a year.
But to back up, I remember the computer program that you used. I don't know if you remember this. There was a very abstract computer program that you used that it almost looked like a DNA strand, and you could zoom in. Do you remember this?
Oh, that was before. That was a different project.
Oh, that was a different thing. Okay.
That was a different project, but Apple computers had just come out. A friend of mine had gotten it out, and I happened to be in the Georgia bar, which had highbrow magazines.
Okay.
I had my printing press at that point. I was a screen printer at that point.
Yep.
And there was an article on the Mandelbrot set. And what are they called? They're called this self-propagating design that repeats but changes, evolves as you go deeper and deeper into it.
It was
an article out, and the guy is a Canadian programmer and had just invented the Mandelbrot set.
Mm-hmm.
Fissions. God, I'll think of the name of those damn things.
So the
fractals. They're called fractals. So, friend of mine, I read that article, and I told my friend who had just gotten it, and I mean, it was an Apple computer. It was like a fat cell phone. I mean, it was little. It was about the size of a cereal box, and it had a screen, maybe a 4x4-inch screen. It was a really, really early Macintosh.
I remember that, yeah.
And I told him about it. He goes, "Oh, well, I'm going to email him. I'm going to contact him and just see what's up." Well, the guy had just published and patented. He sold us the software for $30, something like that. $40.
Funny.
So we get it. Okay, and there's a problem because we can see it on screen, but it's about 40,000 colors.
Yeah.
And I have a 6-color press. So we went deep. I mean, it's like swimming underwater on a coral reef.
Yes.
And things keep expanding. You can pick a single point and dive into that point and blow it up, and a whole new universe comes. And it's similar,
yes,
but different.
I remember this.
And we kept going in deeper and deeper until I said, okay, that's a cool thing.
Yep.
Let's save this. And now let's start combining colors and cutting it down.
Mm-hmm.
We got it down to 6 colors, 2 different designs, 6 colors, and printed it out on paper. And then I took that paper and put it on a light table, and it had that jittery edge, the pixelated step edge. And I took a Sharpie and I smoothed out all the edges and trapped each color so that each color would overlap the other color a little bit.
Yep.
That was before I learned how to do butt-to-butt printing, which is much better and more accurate. But I did that, and then I was a cheapskate. So instead of spending $100 on film to do the color separations, which I did later on some more detailed projects, I just printed out transparencies from Kinko's.
Yep, I remember that.
Then I put them back on the light table, and with an opaquing pen, because it would warp it a little bit, I'd re-register each of the images so they would trap a little bit, and then colored them in a little darker because the film transparencies aren't quite dark, our copier transparencies weren't quite dark enough to create film positives to burn screens with. Burn the screens. And I put out, a month after that guy published the research in Scientific American, I put out the first fractal t-shirt, 6-color fractal t-shirt.
I remember that. Yep.
That was ever done. And some people put out some better ones later where they used process printing to get the 30,000 colors back, where they didn't have to compromise on the colors. But the designs look cool and weird and psychedelic. And I printed up an ass load of those fractals.
I totally remember that. Well, I had it wrong then because I was thinking, so you had actually hand-drawn that Panic image, and it was a quarter, and you just kind of flipped it to make the whole...
All right, I'm at a Grateful Dead show, and for some strange reason, I'm hallucinating. So the band is playing, I'm looking at the band, and I see this beautiful mandala that wasn't there floating above the band. And then I saw it start to diminish, and it got down to an eighth of the design.
A slice
pie
of the
piece.
pie, yeah.
A pie piece. And I saw what was inside that pie piece. And then the pie piece flipped around to it became a circle again. And I went, oh, shit. Because what was in the original pie piece was a few simple lines. But what was in the design when the 8 pieces were put together was exponentially complicated, beautiful, cool design. And I went, that's how they did it. And that's how they did it back in, ancient times.
Right.
They could make a design, but they did, an eighth and then expanded on that. And then I saw the word widespread panic in a weird font across it. So I came back from tour. It's like, hey, I just hallucinated a great t-shirt design for you. And they're like, yeah, whatever. But I had been doing, I worked with the Georgia Theater, and they put on this big psychedelic festival called Super Jam.
Yep.
And I'd done a bunch of the Super Jams. I'd been the merch guy, I was the guy. I was in charge of vending it. I was in charge of designing it. I was in charge of printing it. It was awesome. And I also did the both the Uptown Lounge and the Georgia Theater t-shirts.
Who's playing Super Jam back then? Obviously Panic, but who else?
Blues Traveler, Kinchafuni Cowboys.
Yep.
Couple other of the
I'd have to go back
of the proto thing, but Panic was the anchor.
Yeah.
Almost always. And Blues Traveler, they were great and they were friends.
Yep.
But a bunch of psychedelic and rock bands, and sometimes they'd even have a couple punkier things that had a draw.
Yep.
Some of the country music was good. Normal Town Flyers playing at Allen's and around, and there was some good stuff like that. And there was some, arena rock bands that trying to do original music, but there was really hardly anywhere for them to play, but they were trying to get going.
Truckers
much later, but
they played it.
They're one
Allen's
of the biggest.
Too.
They're one of the biggest. Oh, they did?
Was Allen's their spot, or was it more Georgia Theater? I can't remember. I have to go look. I can't remember.
I'm not sure where we were at with Truckers, but they were definitely 40-watt band.
Oh, okay. Were they? Okay. Gotcha.
But not that they didn't play the theater too, because they got big fast, medium big fast, because they were great.
Yeah, they're fucking
great.
I've been listening to them lately just to re-jump my memory.
The main guy's dad was the bass player for the Wrecking Crew, the most famous recording studio out of Alabama.
You talking about Patterson?
Yeah. Patterson's dad was the bass player for the Wrecking Crew, the most famous set of studio musicians in music history.
Oh, damn.
They played on all the big hits of the 60s and 70s.
Shit.
All the big hits were the Wrecking Crew, not the original bands.
Okay.
Wrecking Crew would go in because they nail it and they were better. They do it at once, but that's where he comes from. And I don't think they were with, I think the original recording studio was called Fame. And the Wrecking Crew started there. And then the Wrecking Crew broke away and started their own competing studio called something else. But that's Patterson Hood's dad.
Okay. I didn't know that.
And so he came from a very musical family, and he and Cooley just had a vision, and we're going to play alt country / rock and roll and a little bit of undefinable. And they were just great out of the gate.
And then
Everybody loved them. They moved to Athens. Most of them. Cooley never did. He wanted to stay in Alabama.
And then
on the farm.
Isbell came, and that was a wrap.
Well, Isbell came because they had a fantastic lead guitarist, and they had a recording session. And the lead guitarist had who I tried to get into my bands later because he could rip it up punk. I mean, he was just anything. He was amazing. Just the shit. He had gold, and he could just play it. But he had a conflict with a wedding. He says, I got to go to this wedding. I can't get out of my brother's wedding or whatever it was.
And Jason,
and they're like, you have got to come, you have got to skip the wedding.
Yep.
This is what we're doing. And he goes, well, I quit the band. And Isbell was a roadie.
Yep.
And stepped up, and he was great.
Yeah.
Immediately.
Yeah.
He was a much better guitar player than anybody would have ever imagined.
Yeah, he was something else. But he still is. I mean, he still makes great music.
Yeah, kudos to his success. He's great, and he plays real country music, and I have a great love for country music. You want a fucking country music podcast? Cocaine and Rhinestones. Dude's a little bit of an asshole, but a lovable asshole.
Who is this?
I can't remember. Oh, he's
Paul Cawthon?
No, he's David Allan Coe's son.
Oh, God damn it.
Something Coe.
Okay. Yeah.
He also has another podcast, which your favorite band sucks, which is too mean. I can't get through it.
Okay.
I mean, there's some jewels in there, but oh my God. You want to talk about the real deal, researched at historical standards, blowing out all the myths. I recommend Cocaine and Rhinestones as my favorite podcast ever. Favorite place behind the soundboard was an awesome place, kind of next to the tapers. The sound was good, and there was always
I like to be back there.
Little empty space there.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite spots, especially in like a big arena.
Yeah.
Because,
it's one of my favorite spots in any arena because the sound guy sets the sound for how it sounds at the board. And the board's a great place to stand behind. Also, there's nobody in front of you. The guy in front of you is always sitting down.
Yeah.
And that stuff is, 8-10 feet of low stuff. And you can stand there and have an unobstructed view.
I've found that to be true about the Fox too. If you can get in the first such and such rows on the balcony, that sound comes right at you.
Yeah, front row loge.
That is the shit.
Is the best. Is front row loge is a better seat than front row.
I told Ashley, I said, or she had gotten some balcony seats for Panic New Year's. I said, you were going to be happy up there because that sound is designed to pipe straight up to you. And she told me later, she was like, if I could go back to the Fox, I'm getting in the balcony because that is the spot.
That stuff was designed before amplification was figured out, really. And you can hear in the back row, you can hear what somebody says in a conversation talking voice on stage, and you can hear the words.
It's crazy.
Same thing, Morton Theater here.
Yeah.
You go in the back row of the Morton Theater here. It's an old vaudeville theater. You can hear every word spoken.
Well, I'm glad we did this. Like I said, I meant to do it years ago. I hate that I missed like Danny Hutchins, Vic Chestnut, Gary Vereen. Like a lot of these people would have had some cool shit to say and some cool.
Yeah, well, Colin might be able to fill in some stuff.
Yeah.
Colin Vereen might be a nice.
Last time I saw Gary was at David Byrne came to play the theater before it burned down, and I was bartending the balcony by myself. And so they had one whole section taped off for Panic folks or Brown Cat folks. And he was there, and we had a good laugh about, he brought up how he would remember me as a kid being the keg pumper at the parties. And we just laughed about that. And
there were a lot of parties.
There were
Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And there were sometimes up to 8 parties. Bands playing at them. They staggered them so you could You know, or when the beer ran out, you rushed to the next one and drank all their beer. And
Nice.
it was exciting because it was at a time where there was an economic high and tons of these college kids had credit cards that would get paid off and re-upped every month. And it was almost unlimited. And, you know, so somebody with a credit card would go buy 10 kegs.
Yep.
And there'd be, tell you what, you drink 10 kegs, that's a party.
Yeah,
that is a party going on.
All right, Pop.
All right, love you, boy.
Love you too.